All right, we're live. Hello, everybody watching this live, and hello, everybody watching this in the future. I'm very happy today to have a friend of mine who I've spoken to before, Fred Roehl. Fred Roehl is an Alaskan native, and so he was actually on an episode on Black Lotus, my previous show, and you could watch that episode on the playlist on this channel. And he actually did 2 episodes, and I've noticed that you've been doing the rounds on a lot of shows, and so that's really good that you're getting your message out. But let me give an introduction for people who aren't familiar with Fred. Now, I will say this is an introduction I'm borrowing it from another episode that you did. So there's this woman named Jessica Jones, also known as the Cryptid Huntress. And she has a show called Off the Trails on Spaced Out Radio. And she did an episode with Fred. And the link to that episode is in the description. Definitely go check her episode out and give her a subscription. But she wrote this awesome introduction. So I'm giving her credit. This is completely hers, but it's a good introduction. Okay. So Fred Roehl is a First Nations Alaskan native and a Kuryong tribal council member from the Dillingham, Alaska area. While he doesn't consider himself a researcher, he is dedicated to documenting the oral history of the Bristol Bay watershed and the state of Alaska as a whole. His YouTube channel, Sub-Arctic Alaskan Sasquatch, is a platform for reporting and recording Alaskan hairy man encounters. It is a source for Alaskans to get information about areas they might go hunting, fishing, or camping in. Even if this information is not accepted by everyone, if it helps one person, then it is successful. With 500 to 2,000 people going missing each year in Alaska, Fred recognizes that not all of them are Sasquatch or hairy man related. However, even if one is, it's one too many. So thank you once again for being here, Fred. I sure do appreciate having you here.
Oh no, thanks for having me. And forgive my dogs; they'll pace by, but they shouldn't interrupt too much here. I got Tank over my shoulder supervising, so.
Oh, he's so handsome. No, he's so handsome. I love it. No, I think it's great to have the dogs there. They're part of the story too. I think they're part of your life, and surely they're aware. Also, the dogs are aware of what's going on with these strange creatures. Perhaps better than we are.
Sometimes they get anxious sometimes when I share experiences because they pick up on my vibe, and so they get unsettled and start, if they be too much, I'll put them in their room.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, let me ask you. So first of all, right now you're living in, let me see, Dillingham, Alaska. Is that where you're living at right now?
No, that's where I'm from. I live in Wasilla right now. There's no year-round work in Dillingham. It's not. Okay. It's socially, it's not the place I grew up. It's kind of gone downhill a little bit as far as influx of drugs and things like that. It's turned into kind of a cesspool. It's not horrible, but there's not enough year-round work to make it worthwhile to live there. So
that's kind of sad. Now, that's really sad. Now, do you think is this increased drug use in this part of Alaska? Does it have to do with just the area? Like economically, there's not a lot going on, and so that leads to drug abuse?
Yeah.
Or what are the causes?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of helpless feelings. There's not a lot of opportunity. There's seasonal fishing, but you can only make so much doing that nowadays with the price of salmon on the market, and so it's become a cycle of drug abuse and needless deaths and just horrible stuff. So I just try to keep it at arm's length and touch base with the loved ones and that type of thing.
How do you keep yourself? I know you're a native, so you grew up in this area, but now as an adult, an independent adult, how do you keep yourself happy and content in Alaska? Because it's not like your typical American city. What have you found that works for you in this environment?
Staying busy. If you allow cabin fever to set in, man, you're done. It's going to be one long depressing winter, and it's a bad cycle. So staying busy is the main thing, and having goals every day, just to, no matter how small they are, it just kind of helps get through. But I've been dealing with Alaskan winters for forever, so it's, I already got my routine. Socializing with good people, but it's just like anywhere else, really. It's just the dynamics are different, especially with the weather. When it gets to 10, 20, 30 below, everyone's miserable. There's no way around it.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. It's good that you're keeping yourself busy. That's good advice, I think, for anybody, even if they're not living in Alaska. Setting a daily goal and keeping yourself occupied is good to just stay mentally healthy.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the climate, I'm really curious. Have you noticed any change in the climate in the winters and the summers since you were a small boy, or is everything staying? What have you noticed?
Big difference in the amount of snowfall per year, even over the course of the last 15 years. It starts later in the season. We don't get as much. They have to restart the Iditarod in like Willow or somewhere else, or sometimes Fairbanks. So that it varies. But when I was a little kid, we had multiple feet of snow, it seemed like, before Halloween. So yeah, it's changed quite a bit as far as that's concerned. Yeah, it's, and I don't know if it's climate change or a natural cycle, or someone manipulating the weather. There's options to pick from, for sure.
Sure. And can you tell me, that's the first time I've heard that word. What is the Iditarod?
Oh, it's a sled dog race to memorialize the Surum run for the diphtheria up in Nome.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so they're having to start that later and later because the snow is coming in later and later.
No, they start at the same time. Usually they start from Anchorage and then go from Anchorage right on out, but they have to change the start sometimes to Big Lake or Willow because of lack of snow in Anchorage. They'll have a ceremonial start where they'll dump snow into the streets so they can have their start, all the photo ops. Okay. And then they restart out in Willow or Big Lake or, somewhere else. There's some alternative places depending on the snowfall that year.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. That's very interesting. Okay. So before we go on, let me just give some shout outs to people in the room. So we have Nina Williams. She says hello, Fred, and hello to me.
Nina.
Hi, Nina. Thank you for being here. Io Walks is here. It is real. It's not a Pokemon. I think I'm wearing a Pokemon shirt right now as well. So Io Walks is a poet. He's a musician and a poet if you follow his channel. So he'll occasionally give us some really good poetry. And then we have Wreaking Havoc. What's up, Wild Trees? Hello, Fred. Wreaking Havoc has had like a lifetime of weird paranormal things. I interviewed him. He had a really crazy interaction with some gray aliens when he was a young boy. And let's see what else we got here. Iowak says he's been napping a lot, finding a lot of stuff, but I can't quite manifest it back into reality. It's quite unexplainable. Okay, yeah, I feel like napping is something that people do that kind of could lead them to start getting depressed if they start napping too much. And I guess that could happen in Alaska too, right? I mean, if it gets dark and cold.
It could. Me personally, I don't nap because of that exact thing. It lead to depression. A lot of people will sleep the day away, and that just, you're existing, you're not living when you're doing that kind of thing. So
that's very true. Io Wax wants to know what kind of drugs, he's guessing it's meth. What kind of drugs have overtaken, unfortunately, these areas in Alaska?
Mainly the opioid crisis. They get hooked on pain pills from an injury, and then it boils down to heroin, and just ugly.
Okay.
I have a guy I grew up with a few years back. He beat a good friend of mine that I used to work with on a fishing boat. He beat his mom to death because of the drugs, trying to get her to give up her drugs that she didn't have.
Wow.
Unfortunate, man. It's ugly.
Okay. That's very sad. Very sad. Okay. Then we have Mr. Catfish. Thank you for being here, Mr. Catfish. Sure do appreciate having you here. Let's see what else we got here. Iowak says, I have a cabin in Alaska song I made, but it doesn't have a cabin, but I don't have a cabin there. Okay, so he made a song about having a...
yeah,
that's good.
The dream's got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Maybe he could manifest it. Like you said. And then Bobby Dizzle's here. Hey, thank you for being here. The movie Iron Will is based off that race. Okay, so there's a movie. Are you familiar with that movie?
Yeah, I seen it several years ago now. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, and then Nancy, thank you for being here, Nancy. My sister lives in Anchorage. Oh, she lived in Anchorage for a few years. Okay, very interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. If you have any questions while we're talking, go ahead and drop them. We will periodically take a break to answer them. And if you're watching this in the future, go ahead and leave a comment. I will respond to all the comments in the future. All right, so let's see. So it seems like right now, your interest, the reason why, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why more people are hearing about you personally, Fred, is because of your interest in Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Is that correct?
Yeah, and honestly, I can't stand being on camera. I don't like being out in the world, so to speak. But there's some things going on up here that no one's talking about, and
Okay.
I'm just kind of trying to, point the direction, like, not to scare anybody or to make it seem like Alaska's all doom and gloom. But the reality is, everything up here wants to kill you, from mama moose to bear. One way or another, it's a wild place, and the more knowledge they have about the potential dangers out there, the better off they'll be.
Okay. And so when was the first time, you said to yourself, like, I'm going to start being more vocal about this. I'm going to start teaching people this knowledge. When did that happen? And what was the thing that made you decide that was what you wanted to do?
Right. Well, it's not to hurt anyone's feelings, because Alaska is way different than the States. But I was hearing a lot of encounter shares that had to do with gifting, sharing, and forest friends. And well, I don't doubt that happens in those places, but up here, it's not that kind of dynamic. It's a very different type of thing going on. Anyone who has an encounter up here, they don't ever speak of feeling a friendly moment or anything like that. It's all primal fear. Even if they don't see it, no friend of mine has ever made me fear for my life, and I couldn't see them. You know what I mean? Like, even without a visual, they're feeling very overwhelmed with fear. And I decided, well, let me share, let me get some of the experiences out. And then I started putting them out, and then people started responding via email. And so I just, been kind of building it up and sharing their experiences from different places and getting the word out there.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Yeah, I mentioned this on the other episode we did, but it's interesting because I interviewed someone called Robert Bitto. I interviewed him on my channel. It's called Mexico Unexplained. But anyway, he mentioned he knows all about Mexico, and all the different cultures and legends there. And he says that in Mexico, there's two types of Bigfoot type creature: one that is friendly and one that's very, very aggressive. So there does seem to be this subset in different parts of the world, the subset of very aggressive Bigfoot.
Right.
And I can understand 100% why they're aggressive. I mean, why they would want to be aggressive to humans. I mean, humans, when humans interact with wildlife, a lot of times you bring death and disease and exploitation. It's hardly, so I understand exactly why they would want to be that attitude. It's not hard to understand. Now, how long have you been interested in Bigfoot? Like, as a small boy, when did you first hear about these?
When we were warned as kids, don't go in the woods alone, don't turn your back on the woods, don't whistle in the woods, the hairy man will get you. We'd get back when I was little, they still do, not as prevalent though, but before we had phone lines and stuff, we used to use the handheld VHF radios and whatnot to communicate in between, houses. And someone would spot a hairy man and it would bounce around VHF and all the kids would be brought inside, things like that. When I was a little kid, I was kind of savvy, and so I figured, they're just telling me stuff to keep me out of the woods. I'm going to go play anyway. And it was all make believe until one day I saw that silhouette standing in the willows, shaking trees and screaming at me. And it was followed up less than a year later with one of these hairy men up on Black Bluff throwing rocks down at our boat when we were stuck on a little gravel bar waiting for the tide to come in. So ever since I was a little boy, when we first moved away from Alaska, the first time I saw the Patterson-Gimlin footage, I literally thought it was filmed in Sunshine Valley, north of Aleknagik there. It was one of those things where I was like, oh, hey, someone was filming in Alaska, and come to find out it was California. And at that time, being a young kid, trying to tell people about experiences, they just, down in the States, they looked at you like you're crazy. So I just stopped sharing and kind of shut down about it.
Okay, interesting. Now, since you mentioned this encounter you had, let's go ahead and talk about that. So I have a video I'm going to play right now, and this video is going to be of the area where you had your encounter on the river. And I shot this video with a computer game called Microsoft Flight Simulator, and so it's supposed to take updated satellite imagery. So when I show it, you could go ahead and talk about your story, and tell me if that area looks familiar. Is that a good representation of what you saw? So
right. Keep in mind, at river level is far different than an overhead. You know what I mean? Because at the river level, you got the height of the riverbank, and the dynamics are a bit different.
Of course. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so let me go ahead and get this set up real fast. Let me do this. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Entire screen, share. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to get the video up and make it full screen. All right. And then
it's pretty cool.
Turn off the sound. Does that look okay to you, Fred? Is it choppy, or are you able to see everything just right?
Yeah, I'm able to see everything. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, go ahead and tell us. This video is about 6 minutes long. I'm going to get it closer to that area. We're going to get really down low. But yeah, if you go ahead and set up the story, what happened in this area to you, and when did it happen?
Back in 2006, there was a trip planned 2 years prior to go prospecting for gold, and went through all the process to get the permission from the native corporations that own the land and what have you to potentially stake a claim. So we left mid-September. We left the day after my birthday, which was September 13th in 06. And it took a couple days of travel going up to Nushagak because the elder that was with us was in his 60s. And so it was slow traveling. But when we got there, we unloaded everything off the banks of the Nushagak River into an old salmon counting tower. And we weren't there, but I mean, less than a couple hours, and it just gotten dark out. And the whole place just creaked. And the problem was there was no wind. So immediately we think, a bear, because we're on a salmon river, man. It's the largest salmon return in the world in that area. So we assumed a bear, and we both got the spotlight. I was using the spotlight, and I had a shotgun, and we swing open the door just to run this bear off. And as we're sweeping from the riverbank side to our right, panning over to our left, when we got just about the 10 o'clock position, we saw 3 sets of eye shine, and this eye shine was like fence post markers, very, very vivid. And these things didn't try to duck and hide from the light. They didn't care. And we're only a half step outside the door. So we immediately shut the door. All I had was a little J hook. We shut that, locked it, which was a joke. But so as soon as we shut that J hook, it felt real muffled inside that little space. It's only 8 foot square with the little 50 style trailer off the back. So there wasn't much room. Like standing in the middle of the room, I could reach out and touch everyone in there. But my cousin's standing right off my left shoulder, and I'm trying to express to the elder, hey, there's hairy man out there. And I was asking my cousin, hey, you saw what I saw, right? And in the midst of that, trying to communicate, he flops under the table immediately to my left, and he's got a death grip on the barrel of this 30-06. And we look, and he's looking opposite side of the room at the window with a sheer look of terror. And so I turn, and I'm holding the shotgun offhanded because I just set down the spotlight. And as I look at the window, I see a face looking back, and the face was just above the brow and just below the nose, filled an 18-inch gap that was the window. And as soon as I turned and made contact with it with my eyes, it turned and from looking at my cousin to looking at me. And within 2 seconds, I knew it was all bad. I felt like food, and there was this primal protect yourself, protect yourself. So I shot 3 times through the wall because this thing started moving, and it screamed. The whole place shifted. It almost took me off my feet, but I thought it was going to throw us in the river because we were less than like 15 feet from the riverbank, you know, where this little place sat, because there was an old counting tower. Like there was this little ladder system right outside where old school guys used to climb up it and literally count salmon one at a time. So that happens and it goes dead quiet. My cousin's still under the table. He's locked up. He's kind of incoherently babbling and not really making sense. My elder, he shut down. And so essentially I end up sitting there for a little more than a handful of hours with my own thoughts and pumping this damn Coleman lantern. I still can't stand a light above my head or that hiss of a Coleman lantern. But anyway, so I basically sat there terrified. I was real shaky at first because I'm trying to grasp, like, of all the years before, typically when there would be an encounter, it would make noise. We would leave the area, and there wasn't really an ominous type of thing happening. So it was the first time I've ever had them like right up on us, like hyper aggressive. So I'm sitting there and I basically resigned myself to death. I did not think I was going to see the other side of it. And that was the only, looking back at it, that was the only thing that kept me from going and laying down in the bunk. Was I figured I was a dead man. I just shot this thing, and I didn't want to. I was going to go with a fight. I wasn't going to just go quietly. So after hours of sitting there, finally my cousin starts talking to me. I get him up and kind of back with me, and we start plotting our escape. Because it's like 20 feet to the riverbank and a 7-foot drop down to get in the skiff and get the hell out of there. And so as we're talking, he brings up, let's spotlight, let's see if we can spot them before we go, because it was real dangerous to even attempt to go in the dark anyway, but we had to go,
Yeah.
So we spotlight the riverbank side and see nothing, and trust me, we were looking, we were spotting for anything we could, and we had a fresh battery in this 1,000,000 candle watt powered spotlight deal, old school, it took the big square 6-volt battery, but we had a fresh one in there. So when we go to the side that we saw the eye shine, we were getting this mirrored effect from the Coleman lantern behind us. So we killed the Coleman and we're spotlighting the tree line, which is approximately about 45-50 yards away. And we start panning back, and we saw nothing where we initially saw the 3. But as we got back to where this old outhouse was, the outhouse is about 8.5 feet tall. Well, once we got to that point, behind that a little ways was this huge black hulking figure. It absorbed the light. Like,
interesting.
The size was one thing. It was very impressive in size, but the scariest thing for me was that fresh beam on that spotlight, it wasn't giving anything back. It was just absorbing the light, and it really felt like a big black nothing was just right over there to get, to come get us. But so immediately we kill that. We're tucked back in this little cubby hole, which is that 50 style trailer. All the windows have been blacked out and boarded up because summertime up here, land of the midnight sun. So when they're doing their jobs, they needed a dark place to sleep. Anyway, so we're tucked back there, and I got my shotgun pointed at the one window, and he's got the 30-06 pointed at the other window. It's pitch black. We can't see anything, but we're out of our minds with fear at that point. As it stayed quiet, because we heard nothing. This thing just started moving. We killed the light, but it was dead quiet. There wasn't a sound. We didn't feel anything in the ground, and none of that kind of movement. And we sat there for a while. And after it got quiet and calmed down, we started communicating more about getting out of there. And as we were trying to formulate a game plan, my cousin, he was not still fully, he wasn't with me. He was talking about this little nail, 16 penny nail we've been kicking around all afternoon. He wanted to nail the door shut with just this one little nail. And I was like, look, you gotta, you gotta stay with me here, man. That nail ain't doing nothing. You just stay with me. And so I got him to snap out of that mindset, because I told him we're not barricading ourselves anywhere. We got to go.
Yep.
But as we were sitting there, we formulate our game plan. Now, time is passing. I'm saying it rather quickly, but there was a lot more going on that I don't want to get into with the elder and whatnot. But we formulate our game plan, and it sounded like it was in the near distance, rotor wash from a helicopter, this thump, 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 thump kind of sound. And then we started feeling it in the ground, and one of these things ran past the shack. And, you know, the way it seemed was like they were staged around us, because when that one ran by, a whole commotion of thumping on the ground and running, and the terror kicked in again. Now, there was a lot of different noises going on outside, a lot of different noises, but I couldn't honestly pinpoint one single thing that stood out, like a hoot, a whoop, and whatever. It was all just terror. It was white knuckle terror. Like I still felt like they were toying with us. It almost felt like they're trying to feed on our fear. It may not have been there, but it felt that way. It felt like they were intentionally trying to provoke something from us.
Wow.
So that went on for about 10-15 minutes. But during that time, it would be a bunch of activity around the outside, and then it was like they would back off a little bit and then do it again. So it was like you'd hear the thumping, you'd feel it in the ground, you would hear noises, and then it would go quiet again, and then it would do it again. So it went off and on like that. I couldn't tell you how many times, because I was half expecting the place to rip apart and us to be smashed against a tree. So once that ended and it got dead, I couldn't tell you how much time had passed, but that time of year, we're basically on a 12-12 light cycle, you know, so 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of darkness. Well, we were getting on in towards the morning hours once that stopped. And so it got quiet. We got quiet. We calmed down. We started communicating again, because in those moments, at one point when they were running around or whatever, I could hear something sniffing the trailer, and that just, it bothers me. Anyway, so that goes on. It stops. It gets quiet, and we're talking again, and we get our game plan formulated. We're not bringing none of that stuff with us that we brought. We had thousands of dollars worth of prospecting equipment, brand new stove, all sorts of stuff. We were geared up, but we were leaving it all. So we got our game plan, and it's not light out, but it's starting to get light. Off in the distance, there's just the slightest hint of light. And so we're planning on, as soon as it's light enough for us to see, you know, clearly at the river, so we don't run into deadfall trees in the water or big rocks, because the Nushagak has a lot of rocks in it, we're going to make our break. So as we're discussing this, again, I don't know the exact amount of time. It had to have been at least 45 minutes after that stop that we started skating, and probably another hour maybe before we had finalized what we were going to do. And so it was just getting light enough to where we could see the silhouette of the top of the trees. And so we knew it wouldn't be long before we could go.
Yep.
And as we're sitting there talking, it's progressively getting lighter, and we hear what sounds like a pellet gun shooting the side of this place. And it started in the cadence of like a thuck, thuck, thuck kind of sound. And then all of a sudden it was a hailstorm of just all on the one side. And you know, 20/20 hindsight, not one window was broken, which really, anyway, it just weird stuff that stands out in those moments. But so that stops. And so again, once that started, we were right back into that little cubby area, rifles crossed again, you know, just, it went chaotic. And so that quieted down, and we sat there probably another almost an hour, and it was definitely getting lighter where I didn't need a spotlight to see the tree line. I couldn't see into the trees because it was still dark and silhouetted by the canopy, but we could see enough to get the hell out of there.
Yes, sir.
So it being quiet, we got right up on the door. We got it ready to go. My cousin was in front of me, my elder behind me, and took one more quick look out the windows and made our go for it. Now, when we got it, it only took a few steps to get to the riverbank because it was only 20 feet. It seemed like 10 miles at the time, but get to the riverbank, my cousin jumps down, start up the skiff, and I squat down a little bit to help my elder get his footing because we're on a cut bank and there was dew on the grass. So once he got his footing, I had to scoot back a little bit because of how I was positioned. I felt like I was going to be forced forward. So I scooted back a little bit, stood up, and just as I got to full height, a rock whizzed past my face, and the only thing that saved me from that rock was just scooting back that 4 to 6 inches, saved it from that rock taking me out. That rock, as soon as it whizzed past my face, everything went kind of slow motion, and I followed it, and it impacted the river in about 3 feet of water so hard it hit the bottom of the river before the water closed over it. So it was very forceful, and that rock had to have been thrown from that distance before I had stood up. So they were anticipating where I was going to be and were really, really accurate, but I slid back a little bit and kind of changed that. So as soon as the rock hit, immediately I whipped to my left, and that big black thing, that mass was coming out of the trees, and I put 3 shots on it with the 30-06. Because when we stacked up on the door to go out it, my cousin had the shotgun and I had the 30-06. So I put 3 shots on it. I heard the bullets hit this thing. It stopped moving forward, but it didn't buckle. It didn't flinch. It just took all 3 of these shots and did nothing. And, I jumped down the bank. I had to cut the line and we got out of there. That's the condensed, version of what happened. A little later on, like a few months back, after I shared this encounter a couple of times, I was able to talk to my cousin. And once we left the riverbank on the skiff, I was trying to get rounds into the 30-06. So I'm kind of tunnel visioned in terror, looking down at the open bolt, trying to shove rounds in. Excuse me. Stop.
No problem.
Stupid dog. Anyway, so I'm tunnel visioned on the 30-06, but unbeknownst to me, they were still throwing rocks at the skiff. Like, I thought we were kind of swaying back and forth in the skiff because he was avoiding rocks, but the rocks he was avoiding were the ones being thrown from the riverbank. I know we were chased briefly because off to my left-hand side, I saw one paralleling us on the riverbank just inside the trees. So, and then, eventually they stopped chasing us and we got out of there.
Whoa.
It was a horrible experience, man. It really was.
So it lasted a whole night and parts of 2 days as well. It sounds like several hours.
Yeah. At least a good 12 hours, give or take. And again, at points of time, we weren't in our right minds. It could have been a little longer, could have been a little shorter, but it was horrible because it ruined our relationship.
Okay.
I tried to talk to them afterwards to get them to share with other people, like, hey, we need to get the word out. If you're going up to Nushagak, stay the hell away from there. They'll try to get you. And they wouldn't respond. They were just like, oh, no, it was nothing. They were playing it down. And that just led to us not talking anymore. Because I'm not someone that's just going to go and sweep it under the rug and pretend that happened. These things try to get us. We got to tell whoever else is going that way, stay the hell out of there,
Right.
So, yeah, I've had people comment, oh, well, you started it by shooting through the wall. Well, hell yeah. You didn't see what I saw. The look it had in its eyes was like, you're done. This. Right. So, for those who may think no one was hurt, think again, because our whole family was hurt. We no longer speak. A 31-year relationship, we were peas in a pod.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we were together to begin with, is because we did everything together up until that point. And then, you know, it was just, and yeah, that's another driving factor with the channel, is to get the word out there. Because there's, you know, I touched on it on a video I uploaded today. There's people that are affected by this and they suffer in silence. You know, they're self-medicating with drugs, alcohol, all this stuff, because they don't feel safe enough to share it somewhere. They're holding it all in, and, you know, they're destroying themselves because they don't feel they're going to be heard, you know, and that kills me on the inside, because I self-medicated for a few years with alcohol, just trying to get past it. And, you know, it's a slippery slope. Once you get into that cycle of being used to, you know, medicating with something, it's really hard to stop that progression into full on just chaos in your life.
Well, yeah, sharing that story, that's a very dense story. There's a lot I want to touch on, but yeah, but first I want to, you know, it's very true. You know, I've had at least one paranormal encounter with someone else, and it wasn't major, but right after it happened, that person was like, I'm done talking about it. And so I think that happens a lot with people. And so sometimes if you're by yourself, well, maybe no big deal. Well, it is a big deal, because, you know, if you're with yourself, perhaps, like you said, it causes depression, it causes suffering, because you have a hard time processing it. You feel alone. But then if you're with a group of people, then with your family, it could also cause problems, because then it causes this, you know, you don't agree on what should happen next, and then that could cause problems. And I think that goes over. Right. I just think that goes overlooked. A lot of people who have not had paranormal encounters, or who study the paranormal for fun, they perhaps they don't realize the amount of human suffering, which is a lot of times a byproduct of a paranormal encounter. I definitely have noticed that pattern.
Yeah, and it's really sad. You know, it's sad. And on top of that, if you're not telling about the dangers, then the next person that goes that way can, you know, have the same dangers. You know, I'm not saying it's guaranteed to happen. I'm just saying the potential is there.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's only common decency to warn somebody about a danger that you narrowly avoided yourself. Okay. So, let me ask you this: those hairy people that you encountered that day on the river banks. What is your opinion? Do you believe these are just biological animals like a bear, or do you think there's something else going on, that it's not just an animal? I mean, what do you think's going on there?
Well, you know, I think they're an animal, but I think they're way more adapted in the woods than we are. You know, I've heard talk of portals and this and that. I haven't seen that. I have seen one run, and when we got to the tree line, it's natural camouflage. It looked like it disappeared, but it was still right there. You know what I mean? So I haven't seen any kind of paranormal kind of thing with them. No portals.
Okay.
Like I told D.A. Roberts, I didn't see him dancing around a Ouija board before attacking us or anything like that. You know what I mean? So all I saw was a flesh and blood creature that was out to get us.
Interesting. Okay. So can you describe, there's two things I want to touch on about the hair, because so what you're describing an animal, and when you talk about its hair and its camouflage, you're describing a biological concept called an adaptation. So every living thing has adaptations that help them survive. So these dogs you have, they have adaptations like, you know, super hearing compared to humans, really good smell, really good eyesight. So these Bigfoots seem to have an adaptation with their fur. So you mentioned two things about the fur that I want to expand on. So the first thing in your story, it was very interesting. You said that when you shined this powerful light at the Bigfoot, you said it was almost like a void, like nothing would, like the light was not hitting anything. Can you go into detail? What do you think was going on there? Was that the hair? Do you think the hair was absorbing the light, or it was a property of the hair? What do you think was happening in that case?
Yeah. I think about that often, because with the other creatures, we got eye shine back with the light.
Okay.
You know, with this thing, we didn't even get eye shine back. It was just that figure, and it absorbed all the light. And so I literally have no detail other than a pitch black silhouette, and that's all we saw. Even with the daylight, it was still pitch black. It wasn't giving nothing back. Like with anything black, you hit it with a bright enough light, it's going to give you something back. It's going to, illuminate in one way or another. But this was like putting a flashlight into a black hole. It just wasn't, there was nothing there.
Now,
that was far creepier than its size.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you saw the silhouette, did the silhouette still appear to have 3 dimensions to it? Did it seem to have like a width to it, or was it just like a flat?
It was. Okay. It was very robust. You could tell it had dimension to it. It wasn't just like a flat shadow moving. Okay. It had dimension, but you couldn't get any detail out of it because it was at least 5.5 foot wide, 13, 14 foot tall. It was big. Wow. Like.
And how far away were you from it, you think?
That little outhouse was probably no more than 30, 40 feet, kind of cattywampus off the back corner. So in reality, it was probably 30 feet away. Okay. And this thing was behind it at least 5 feet from when we saw it, because we only saw initially from about what center chest would be to the top of the silhouette when we first beamed. And then when we shut off the light, it had just started moving kind of towards us. So, we killed the light and hid. But when it was coming out of the trees, it was still the same effect. Like when I brought the rifle up to put a bead on it, I wanted to shoot for the head, but there was no eye shine. There was no, at that point I couldn't make out a head area. So I just went center mass, get the biggest target I can and just get some shots on it. And honestly, in the moment, man, this thing just threw a rock at me. So, I was hoping I was going to drop it. And 30-06, man, is not, it is a very powerful gun. We killed walrus with that gun, moose, bear, you name it. A 30-06 can handle business when it comes to that kind of thing. So when this thing took 3 shots and didn't flinch or waver, that still bothers me, because up until that point, 31 years of my life, the 30-06 was the best thing in the woods. It was a multi-purpose, So it just unanswered things like that is kind of what drives me as well. Like the one we saw in 95, it was in an alpine meadow, and it was a bunch of dead grass, and the grass was probably 3 foot tall, and the wind was blowing, and the only way we knew this thing was there, because it was a kind of like a caramel, kind of blonde, kind of like dead grass color, was the wind blew, and then we saw her. It was a female, and she stood up and looked at us, made a weird noise, and then took off running from our left to our right. And it was approximately about 75, 80 yards to where it could get to the trees. But this thing, man, moved so fast that it almost looked like it was blending in with the grass as it went. But as soon as it hit the tree line, it literally looked like it disappeared. It crashed through a little ways, and we saw it. But these things have the ability to, if they stand still, they have natural coloring in their hair or something, they just blend in like automatically, like I use the analogy of like a duckling going into the grass. Come on, Patches. Sorry, when I start talking about stuff, my dogs feel my anxiousness and start pacing around looking for the danger.
I understand. Okay, so yeah, that's the other thing you said, because you said the camouflage is really good. So the color of the hair is does it match their environment? Is that what's going on, or do you think it could change color? Do you think maybe it could reflect light or something?
See, I haven't never seen one change color, but the ones I've seen kind of have a grizzled look, kind of like a reddish brown mixed with black, mixed with grays and things like that. So in that aspect, they naturally break up once they get into similar colors. They just immediately blend in, and you wouldn't notice them unless they want you to.
Okay, Okay, that makes sense. Let's catch up on some comments real fast. See what everybody's got to say. That was a great story, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it was
Yeah,
very
for sure.
emotional. We got welcome to the show is here. Thank you so much. I know welcome to the show is in London time, so props for being here. I think it's about 3 a.m. in London right now. So thank you for being
Oh,
here.
wow.
A good fan of the show. Let me go back to where we left off here. Okay, here we go. Bobby has a question. Says, hey, Waltrees, ask Fred about what he thinks about Bigfoot sensing your camera and your intentions when Bigfoot scouting. If this topic comes up before you get to it, comment, feel free to skip. Yeah, so I have the same thing. Okay, do you think Bigfoot can sense a camera, an electronic camera left somewhere? And do you think he could tell what your intentions are? You know, if you're mean or if you're
No,
nice.
I don't know. Because part of that is I've personally had equipment die in the field with new batteries. I didn't see anything around, didn't hear anything around, but I've had equipment just mysteriously just dead battery. As far as them knowing your intentions, I don't know about that one because like I wasn't the best person as a young man, and neither was a lot of people. But I also know of people that were your run of the mill saints
Mhm.
that have been in that area that had just as a horrific of an experience as I had. So
Okay.
I can't necessarily say they can read your intention, but I think it's like us, like reading body language. I
Sure.
think it could be along those lines. You know, maybe they can sense your intent by your posture, you know, actively hunting, things of this nature. So I don't know. There's too many variables to say one thing, you know, and I don't want to sit and paint myself into a corner and, you know, stand on something without all the information.
Okay, that's great. No, thank you for that answer. That's a fine answer. Rican says, "Good question, Dizzle. All the phenomena I record is 100% aware of my camera." So Rican Havoc, he has he uses infrared cameras in his bedroom in Philadelphia, and he's recorded like shadow people, like
Mm.
shadow beings moving around, orbs, and even some men in black. So he believes that these things are aware of the camera. That's what he's commenting on, and then oh,
Uh, and,
but
and,
oh, go ahead.
and, and they could be, you know,
Yep.
no, I was
Bobby.
saying they very well could be. I'm not a researcher. So when I go into the field, it's to share an encounter location, but I haven't technically went out investigating.
Sure.
It's just not in my culture. However, when I'm out there, if I come across something, I'm going to show it. You know what I mean? But I never directly go with the intent to search out, you know, the hairy man or anything like that.
No, I understand. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it sounds like you're sharing your own encounter, and other people are giving you encounters, and you're sharing them on a map and a time. That sounds like the type of work that you do, which is very, very
Yeah,
important.
exactly. Yeah,
Yes. So Bobby says that not whistling in the woods
yeah,
is also an
definitely.
Appalachian thing. I did not know that. That's the first time I heard that. So you're not supposed to whistle in the woods. Okay, is that because it attracts the attention, negative attention? Is that the idea?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because, from like the coast of Vancouver, BC on up, they're known to whistle. So when you whistle, it's a bad omen. It's kind of like we it's universal up here. We call it the hairy man, and the reason being is in the native tongue. If you were to say it, then that could bring on the hairy man as well.
Mhm.
So that's why you will hear typically everyone calls it the hairy man, even though it may be Chakayok or what Nantinak, what have you. You know what I mean? So it's usually just hairy man because
Right.
again, it's believed that whistling, saying their name or whatever can just invite them in.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Uh, Bobby says, "True, Rican. There's just too many experiences with too little evidence for there not to be an issue with the media being present." Yeah. So he's commenting on the fact that there's so many encounters that people have with Bigfoot or with whatever, but there's so little physical videos or pictures. So the idea I think Bobby's getting at is that they're somehow aware of this and they avoid it. It's the difference between like a bird. If you're going
Yeah.
bird
Yeah.
if you're gonna go watch birds or shoot some pictures of birds, the birds aren't like really 100% aware of the camera. They're not really going to try to avoid the camera. Whereas maybe these paranormal things are very aware of
Right.
what's. Um,
That could be, but then again, let's look at the level of ridicule involved here, because I have seen video footage that is far better than the Patterson Gimlin footage or anything else out there. But no one's going to see that footage because of the ridicule. There's so many people that will take it to their grave before facing the ridicule and being picked apart by anyone else out there. There is plenty of video footage. There's all sorts of anecdotal evidence, footprints and what have you, but evidentiary footage is not going to be shared in the way you think it would be. Like guys like me and you, we're going to be like, oh, everyone's got to see this. But the ridicule, I'm telling you, I know personally, I've seen the footage 4K. This was taken just last fall. This thing walked right out in the middle of their yard, staring at her husband, and he had the daughter behind him, and this thing walked by with sheer disgust. And no one will ever see that. And to me, that's a disservice to them and the world, but they don't want the ridicule. They don't want strangers on their property. They don't want to be drugged through the mud and be doxxed and followed to their job and all this stuff. So there's plenty out there, man. It's just no one's going to see that. And I'm hoping that the more people that share and more comes out, they'll get brave enough to even let someone release it anonymously. But at this point, there's several people that just it's not gonna happen at this point.
Well, that's an incredible story you shared about that video. And yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. People that come out with paranormal stories, it doesn't go well for them. The majority of people will ridicule them. They will get negative attention. They're really not going to get rich off of it either.
No.
So it's very difficult. So I understand that. Now, can you tell me, I know you don't want to give details about this 4K video, but can you tell me the circumstances? Like, how did you come about seeing the video? The people that shot it, how did you hear about it? How did they show it to you?
Right. Through a friend of the family and through a conversation like me and you are having, they brought up, well, so-and-so has been having some issues and had a goat killed. And so we went down earlier this spring when there was still snow on the ground just to visit. And the conversation started off by them saying and explaining to me how their goat was killed, something tore it in half and threw both pieces at their cabin, right? Jesus. So, yeah, exactly. And they have a young kid there, that this is, his daughter or whatever. And he was telling me how he felt going out in the yard and whatnot, just an ominous feeling of death coming and what have you. And what led up to the video is 2 days prior was when the goat was killed. And then there was banging on their house and whatnot during the course of time, just at sporadic times. So the daughter had been kept up in the house for too long, so dad took her outside, just right out front, to play, and mom was videotaping from inside the daughter playing and what have you, and this thing came out of the trees, and immediately the husband sees it, stands up, puts his daughter behind him, and this thing walks within 10 feet in front of him, just looking down at him. It looked very human, real broad jaw, like an ashen gray color to its base, had hair all the way around except, around the eyes and whatnot, real stringy kind of looking hair, but not real long, maybe 6-7 inches at its longest point. And it was every bit of about 11.5 feet tall. And it wasn't very hulking, but it's in proportion. It wasn't scrawny, but it wasn't like a bodybuilder. It had kind of a lean silhouette. But that thing just walked right by it, and the look on its face, looking at the husband, man, if looks could kill, and I don't know why it didn't, but that's just how that happened to work out. Wow. Real creepy stuff. The footage is so powerful when you're watching it. It's like you're literally watching it out your window. It's crisp, it's clean. It wasn't a damn suit. And it's a shame because that that footage could save someone's life. You know what I mean? Just the knowledge of knowing for sure, without a doubt, this is what we're dealing with. But instead, we're left with speculation, and you know that just leaves a wide open door for the ridicule, the naysayers. You know, all this. You know, where's the evidence and blah blah blah. You know, it's a matter of accepting the evidence versus proving something to somebody. Because if they don't want to accept it, they're never going to. Even if you got one half dead, still flopping on the ground, they're going to try to debunk it regardless. Right. So, you know what I mean? So it's kind of.
That's interesting, man. Well, hopefully, you know, you telling that story is it's almost as good as seeing the video. What's interesting about that story is I've heard the same thing. So I did a Bigfoot video a few episodes back. It was called How to Collect a Bigfoot Body. And I talked about a guy who saw a Bigfoot in Ohio. He saw it very close up. It was in his window. He had a 2-story house. He was a little boy. He saw the face right in his window. And he described the same kind of things. Like, they're very expressive in their face. He said there was a lot, it was in the 70s. There was a lot of little kids playing. And then the Bigfoot was looking at them. He said it smelled really bad too, but the Bigfoot was looking at him and it had joy in its face. Like, it was very joyful and happy. But but then the second the Bigfoot saw him looking at him, he said it turned into disgust and anger, like fury. So the face just switched like that so they're very expressive and angry like that with their face. Just like you mentioned.
What it reminded me of was like it wanted to do something, but something was stopping it. It kind of like two guys that are about to fight and someone breaks it up, and the one walking away, the aggressor's kind of like, you're lucky this time, kind of, you know, feel to it. And it's powerful in that way. When you see it, it's like you're right there. It's tangible. There's no guesswork, you know, like, oh, is that a seam to the suit and all? No, there's no doubt, no question.
Now, where was the location of that video roughly? Like, where was this happening?
Kenai Peninsula.
Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Okay, well, that's crazy. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see what Regan says. Regan says, in my case, most of them look directly at the camera, so these things know. I'm sure Bigfoot does too. So yeah, he's talking about his shadow people, the things he shoots. Right. They look directly at the camera. And then Iowak says, I shot an angel with my father's rifle. I should have set it free. Very interesting. And then John P. Adventures is sending us good vibes. Thank you for being here and virtual hugs. I'm sure happy that you're here. Tina Mobley, that would have been really scary. Yeah, these are very scary stories for sure. Thank you for being here, Tina, by the way. I appreciate you being here. Nina says, it is really a tragic thing that this rift happens to people. Yeah, so talking about the people who relationship suffers because of a paranormal encounter. When they were once friends or close family members. And then, let's see. Tina says, yeah, thank you, Fred and Wild Trees. Enjoying hearing your experiences, Fred. Okay, yeah, me too. Yeah, Fred is a great storyteller. Very lots of emotion, and his intentions are very good. Welcome to the show. Says, I can't recall ever seeing thermal images of a Sasquatch. You know, so you could have these cameras that just shoot like heat. And so, I haven't also seen that either. So that'd be interesting. I wonder if their hair.
I've seen what they claim to be thermal images, but they're, you know, unless it's real nearby, it's a glob squatch to me, you know, because there's too much. It's too subjective. You know, I've been to places where I saw trackways. I didn't film it. It was too subjective. I would prefer to, if I'm going to record anything, it be tangible, without doubt, without wiggle room. Otherwise, it's just another broken stick. It's another pile of logs. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I'd like to see this topic progress further with better evidentiary footage, like what I just discussed. And I know it's out there. It's a matter of people willing to get over that ridicule hump, so to speak, because you know, it's easy to you know, armchair quarterback, like, oh, well, you shouldn't worry, you know, you could easily, you know, let someone else pass it off or whatever. But in the moment when they're in that fear, that shuts down everything, you know, because, you know, the fear of what happened, the fear of the ridicule, and not wanting to be viewed as crazy. That's another big thing. You know, a lot of people who share their experiences with me, that's the first thing they say is, look, I'm not crazy. Yeah, and that to me speaks volumes, because they're more worried about appearing crazy versus sharing the important information that they had, you know, stumbled upon them or what have you. So, you know,
Right.
it's a shame, really.
Yeah, it's very true. I think what you're saying is so true, because I don't think there's any doubt right now that in this year, the year of our Lord 2022, it is still, people will still get ridiculed for Bigfoot beliefs or for any kind of expression. That still is very pop. That's going to happen, and I think it's also true what you said, that if we get this more mainstream, if people start sharing more, however they feel comfortable, then that will go away. That feeling of ridicule will go away, and that will be ultimately a good thing for everybody involved, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And hopefully, people try to send me pictures, okay? And I tell them, if this picture means something to you, keep it, because I'm going to share whatever you send me, and I won't share any glob squatch pictures. I don't want a picture where you got to circle to look to find it. It's not like finding Waldo, I want, if you're going to send a photo, I want it obvious what we're looking at. I don't want any guesswork. And so a lot of people won't send me their pictures because of that, which, I get it, but I'm not going to just flood my channel or my website with glob squatch pictures, because it's too subjective. It means something to whoever took it, but the rest of us are like, where's it at? Oh, the circle. Okay, I'm seeing a dark shadow, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean something to someone else. So
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, because you're like you said, you're very clear about your intentions. You're not a researcher. You're not here to analyze photos. You're here to share information. And if you're going to
yeah,
share information, you need to have clear photos. That's your intention, and that makes that
yeah,
makes total sense.
yeah,
Okay. And then
yeah.
Mr. Catfish says, yeah, their senses are very keen, more so than humans. Yeah, I believe that Bigfoot senses are very, very keen. I want to talk about your website and your YouTube channel. So I thought I could pull them up real fast, and you could kind of walk us through them a little bit. So I could pull them up on the screen, if that's okay with you. I have both of
Yeah,
them
for
here.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, first we'll
My-
just.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I'll say first I'm gonna just share your. Here's your YouTube channel. I'm just gonna share it. It's called Sub-Arctic Sasquatch. So go ahead and subscribe here.
It's
Um,
Sub-Arctic Alaska
oh yeah,
Sasquatch.
sorry about that. Yeah, Sub-Arctic
No worries.
Alaska Sasquatch right there. And yeah, so then let's see. How long have you had this channel up?
Little over 3 months.
Oh wow. Okay. So yeah, you got a lot of traction already. That's great. That's great to hear. Look at these videos. Okay. And then
Yeah, I have 85 total as of today.
okay. Very good. Very good. And then are these are you sharing stories with people and
Yeah,
giving them
uh,
advice?
a few of them are my encounters. Advice I give off camera.
Okay.
I don't want. With my videos, if you've seen them, I'm very cut and dry. Hey, Fred in Alaska, here's what happened, and I'm done. I don't have intros, none of that. I just share what was shared with me, and I leave it in their hands. And it's that's the way I would prefer to get my information. I don't. I'll speculate on a few things. I may comment on some stuff, or make a comment about what happened to the person, but uh, I won't go into much more than just a brief mention of something, whether it be the fear related, or, a berry bush, or, just minute things. Cause I don't want it to be about what I think about their encounter. I want it to be about their encounter, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
want to try to
yeah.
keep things true to
Just the
what they share.
just the facts, basically, just the facts of what
Mhm.
it was. Okay.
Exactly. I lay it on the table, and that's it,
Okay, and here's your website. So it's called Subarctic Alaska Sasquatch.com. How long has the website been up?
Not as long as the channel has. Dave, the tech guy, on that port there, when you click the map of encounters, it's an interactive map. You zoom in and pick a pinpoint in an area, and it'll pull up the corresponding video from the channel on the web, on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay, very cool. Yeah, here we go. That's a lot of encounters. Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and if you zoom into an individual one, if you click on it, it'll bring up the encounter video from the area, and it'll pull it from the library. It's linked, it's embedded with the YouTube channel.
All right. Very cool. Interesting. Okay. And so do you get these encounters? Are people mailing you these encounters through email, or how are you getting a
They're
hold of them?
emailing me, some of the people I know personally, so it was just a matter of, talking to them or whatever. But mainly by email, and trying to get people to, even off camera, just in their own voice, to share. It's really hard, especially with my fellow natives. Um, I got an email last night from someone I grew up in the same village with. We didn't run with the same crowd, but I know this person. You know what I mean? I know of them, and they've had identical experiences, throughout life in the same areas and whatnot. But even to get them to share in a public way in their own voice is still a very hard bridge to cross. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I respect it. I get it. And I just hope one day they can see nothing bad happen to me. And honestly, I don't care what people think about me. It means nothing to me. It has no relevance on what's happening out in the woods. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So,
sir. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. So definitely visit that website and subscribe to Fred's channel. That would be great. All right. So then, so yeah, I wanted to see right now, so what are the most important things people should know about Alaska? What is the message you want people to get out? If you had some bullet points, right now, what would be those things that people should be aware of?
never underestimate the weather. Never underestimate what someone tells you about a certain area, even if it sounds outrageous.
Mhm.
Don't take it for granted. In our culture, the reason we share these things, especially about the weather, is someone may be going upriver, and the weather will affect whether or not you can make it upriver safely. So
Mhm.
it's all tied to the oral history and oral tradition of sharing what we've seen and what we know. So therefore, so whoever's going there next knows, oh, at this particular place you got to go to the left versus continuing straight. It has to be accurate. You know what I mean? So it's Alaska is a beautiful place, but it's very dangerous. It can be deceptively warm, and then all of a sudden, within 5-10 minutes, it could be literally snowing on you. We've had it snow in July on a
Mhm.
warm day. Then all of a sudden, a system moves in from up north, and you're getting dumped on with snow. And you're dressed for summer weather. You could be in shorts or some light pants, no coat. Things can change real fast. Same thing with bears. They're not your cuddly friend.
Mhm.
They A soldier was just killed right outside Elmendorf base in exercises not even 2 months ago. You
Wow.
know, so it's beautiful but dangerous. Never take it for granted. And if someone warns you, just heed the warning. Um,
Right.
that would be the most poignant things I could express. Just don't take it for granted.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I could vouch for that. Yeah, having been in the mountains, in the woods, I like to go out with more than one person. Definitely not by myself, and everybody
Yep.
knows where I'm going to be, when I'm going to be back,
Yeah.
and I definitely check the forecast before I go out. I make sure I have plenty of water. I do make sure I have like a map, a compass. I have food on me just in case
Yeah.
something were to go wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
always vigilant of my surroundings as well.
Yeah, same here. And in some of my videos, like when I was filming remote at a couple of counter locations, my head was on a swivel. There were some
Mhm.
very uncomfortable places we went to, and yeah, I just, for a lot of people on the outside looking in, they could easily take this information for granted. They could just it's just stories. Oh yeah, he's a good storyteller. It's it's whatever. He's just entertaining people or whatever. Well, that's fine. If that's all you get out of it, that's cool. However, if you come up here or go in the woods somewhere and all of a sudden you're hearing aspects of a story I had spoken about, like weird owl hoots, weird whistles,
Mhm.
certain screams and whatnot, it, maybe that will help them go, oh, well, maybe it is that. Maybe I should maybe change my course and go a different way. And if that helps someone, that's cool,
So I'm getting the impression that if someone were to go to Alaska, they're prepared, everything's going fine, weather's good, but they hear this weird owl hoot, they hear a whistle, they hear weird sounds, they get a strange feeling in their stomach. Perhaps that's the point where they should end their plans. They should cut them short and head back.
Right, maybe go to a different area, because culturally that's what we'll do back home. If we're going somewhere to berry pick and we hear a weird scream or get a weird feeling, we'll go to a different berry patch. It's that simple. So, even non-believers, maybe they hear something in one of the encounters, and then it sticks in their mind, and something happens in their neck of the woods that has a similarity. Maybe just knowing and hearing that will spark enough to go, well, maybe I should back off of this and not make the risk.
So what is this connection between berry bushes and paranormal creatures? Because I remember you also had somebody, I believe it was a family member, who saw a little person.
My Aunt Martha. I don't know. I don't know if it's a food source, or if there's something medicinal about the bush itself. Not enough information to really have a very solid answer.
It's interesting because I think it was in some Greek or legends or something. Basically, the food of the gods was thought to be like sweet stuff, like fruit, honey, and milk. This was thought to be the food of the gods. So perhaps berries are in that. They fall into that sweet fruit type of food. But yeah. So
right.
So are you more likely, do you think, to encounter a paranormal animal if you're near a berry bushes, or is that not true?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of berry patch encounters that I haven't even gotten to as far as sharing on my channel. What I think it is, and it's just my own speculation here, is berries are seasonal. And people move seasonally from fish camp to hunting camp, and so forth. And I just think that the berry patch part of it is something that coincides together. You know what I mean? Like they're out there for the berries too, and it just so happens we're both going at the same time for the same source. So, and as far as the little people having any bearing on the berries, I don't know. I wish I had a little better insight into that, but I just don't.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that about you. Just the facts. Okay, let's see. Let's catch up with some comments. So Tina says she just subscribed to you. Thank you, Tina, for doing that. Tina, thank you for the sub. Hope to see you in the future. And then welcome to the show says that's a cool feature, talking about your map, your interactive map.
Oh, yeah.
On your website. That is a very cool feature. Okay. Interesting. And then let's see. Tina says, I don't chat very often. I just pop into chat more to say hi. Well, that's fine, Tina. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure happy to have you here listening. And I appreciate your contributions when you do pop in. Tina says she's seen her own share of oddities. And I totally believe you, brother. Yeah, I think most people that watch this channel have had some kind of encounter, and we just want to learn a little bit more. So what other kind of creatures are there in your culture, in Alaskan culture? We have these hairy men, and then we have the little people.
Little people. You have the, like more towards the Bering Coast, you got the Tushtaka, which is the Otter Man, which I feel is just could potentially be a misidentified hairy man. But again, I wasn't there when they were, using that analogy for the mythology, which I don't think it's a myth. There's that. There's there's variations. There's the wicked mermaid, up north on the coast, where the mermaid will lure people out with some kind of sound, singing of some kind, just to get you close to the water. And if it can get you close to the water, then snatch your soul. There's just mainly those ones, the hairy man, the little people, Otter Man, the mermaid. There's also hell wolves or demon wolves, which are extremely large, like dire wolf or larger size wolves that are said to, roam around. One thing that caught my interest though is there's a place off the Yukon where people have reported hearing elephant trumpeting, like a woolly mammoth, and so that sparks my interest because there's a very high potential of that because the vastness of Alaska. We could fit 19 states into our state, and not all the small ones either. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's so much land mass that I certain aspects of it I don't dismiss offhand. Some of the other mythology, like the little people thing, I think there's definitely validity to it, simply because my aunt was a no-nonsense woman. You don't want to mess around. My aunt didn't play no games. None of my elders did. If you messed up, you messed up. And they were always blunt and to the point. Even if it hurt your feelings, they didn't care. And she stood on her sighting and her encounter until the day she died. So
can you share that encounter real fast for the people who haven't heard it?
Yeah, it was her and a couple other of my aunties. And they were out berry picking with my grandpa, and my grandpa was off a ways, kind of glassing for moose and looking around for moose. And they were in this little cutback on the berry patch, and she said she saw it laying down, and then it stood up. It was like a greenish-gray color, real ugly, but had on kind of like tattered-looking animal furs. And she said it was doing a dance and making a noise that started attracting her to it. And she didn't want to. She was just compelled to go towards it. And it was somewhere along that point that my grandpa caught wind of her and yelled at her to get back with her sisters, and that snapped her out of it. And then everything that she was like visualizing and dealing with went away. So
wow.
And the way she was, I knew she was very strict and not mean, but she didn't play games since I was real little. But I didn't hear about her experience until I was about 13, 14 years old, when she was telling someone else. And it was very compelling. As far as the other ones, I don't dismiss them offhand. Part of the Hairy Man project that I'm doing, as far as the documentary, is going to touch on these things: the Hairy Man, the little people. There's a local legend of Moose Man, Lady in White. Every small town has a Lady in White, or a Dead Man's Curve, or things of this nature. So I'm gonna check out some of those topics as I'm doing the documentary.
Can you talk more about the documentary? How's that coming along, and what are your bigger plans for it?
I have some of the one-on-one interviews with a couple of the elders done, and my vision for it is to talk about the past and what started some of the legends, and then bring it into modern day, kind of like a timeline. Stop. Hold on a second here. Can you give me just a second? I'll jump back in.
Yeah.
I gotta tend to these guys real quick. I'm gonna mute the camera and the mic real quick. I'll be right back.
No problem. All right. Well, Fred is taking care of his dogs. Let's see what else we have here. Welcome to the show. I subscribed. He says it's an excellent guest. I agree. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask them now while we have a little downtime and Fred is taking care of his dogs. Any questions you have for me or for Fred, feel free to ask him, and we'll definitely get to them. We're talking about his documentary here. But yeah, basically, it's very curious. I want to ask Fred as well if he believes that we have a distinct species in Alaska as opposed to Texas, where I'm at. Texas is in North America, but it's much lower down the state. It's closer to the Gulf Coast, and Alaska is up here. And so, they're described to look differently. They're supposed to be like a skunk ape. They're not as big, they're not apparently as aggressive down here in Texas. So my question is going to be, I wonder if these are different species. They're not just one species, kind of like chimpanzees. You have two types of chimpanzees, I think, at least. You have a bonobo and your garden variety chimpanzee. But the bonobo is apparently very not as aggressive. They're more sexually based. They have a sex-based culture. And then the bonobos, the regular chimpanzees, are very aggressive. So definitely I'm wondering about that. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, pretty sure the Men in Black just came for him. Yeah, I think we did lose Fred's connection, so it could be just a bad connection. We'll wait a little bit here for him to come back. But yeah, we can never discount the idea that a Men in Black came and got Fred. But he is a man of the land. He's a savvy man, and so I'm confident that he will be able to fisticuffs, do whatever he needs to protect himself from the Men in Black in Alaska. But yeah, what else do I want to ask him? So yeah, I've talked on this channel about gifting Bigfoot, and he definitely is against this idea. Now I think it's against. He does not believe it's we should do this with Alaskan Bigfoot because they're so aggressive. So if I were to leave a gift for an Alaskan Bigfoot, then it probably wouldn't be a good thing. It sounds like with Alaskan Bigfoot, I want to avoid all kinds of contact. Like I said, if you get any kind of weird feeling with these Alaskan Bigfoot, you should probably just go away. Whereas it looks like other people in other parts of the country or the world, they could kind of cohabitate. They could live in the same area with Bigfoot without too much aggression. Although I still consider Bigfoot a very wild animal. So, with any wild animal, you have to have caution. You can't treat them like a dog or a cat that's been domesticated. Let's see. Welcome to the show says, just as radical about the bear and the soldier attack. Yeah, that's crazy. Let me see. Let me try to pull that up as well. So while we're waiting, if I'm looking away, I just want to see if Fred contacts me on my messenger. But yeah, let's pull up that article real fast. That's pretty sad, but okay. So let me look that up. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and wait for Fred to come back. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's see. Alaskan soldier killed by bear. Here we go. It's like the first thing that comes up. Let's see. This is very unfortunate, but how about we read CBS News, this first one. Alaska. Look, I've been to Alaska. I didn't spend too much time there. I did a little bit of research, but I was along the Tanana River, and I got the distinct impression that Alaska is a very rugged, dangerous, beautiful place, for sure. So it says here. So I'm looking at CBS News. If you want to find this article, it says Staff Sergeant Seth Michael Plant identified as soldier killed by a bear in Alaska. He always went above and beyond. See, so it says here that the U.S. Army on Thursday identified the soldier who died this week of injuries sustained during a bear attack in a military training area in Alaska. Wow. There's a photo. Let me see if Fred's back. Okay, Fred's not back yet. But let's see. Okay. And let me check my messages real fast. Nope, just my friend saying that he scored with a chick. So that's unrelated, but good for him. I'll have to get back to him. Okay, says the Army in a statement said that Seth Michael Plant, 30 years old, was pronounced dead at a hospital on Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage following the mauling on Tuesday. Oof, never a good word, a mauling. Never good to hear. Another soldier received minor injuries in the attack in a training area west of the Anchorage landfill, according to the Army. Plant was from St. Augustine, Florida. He had been at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson since July of 2021. The Army said in a statement, he was an infantryman from the 3rd Battalion, 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Okay, let's see. Oops, got something playing here. Get rid of that. Let me check real fast to see if Fred's back. Fred's not back yet. Okay. I'm checking my messages just to see if Fred's going to pop back in. He might have lost. He might have lost a little bit. Whoops. That's the video right there. Okay. Yeah, Fred, he may have iffy internet, but we still got a lot of good information, I think. And and we'll definitely have to have Fred back on again. I guess, yeah, I will also start my new stream schedule starting this Tuesday. Tuesday and Fridays, I'll start doing the show at same time, 8 p.m. Central, 2 a.m. London time. But yeah, it's going to be Tuesday and Friday night from now on. Let's see what else it says here. So he always had a smile on his face. He always went well above and beyond. Okay, let's see. Alaskan Department of Fish and Game said a den with 2 brown bear cubs was found nearby. Okay, so it sounds like a mother bear, which we've all heard are very aggressive, protecting their cubs, their children. A department in a statement said after the attack, a brown bear approached the area, and officials who responded to the attack used a bear spray, an irritant that could hurt bears. The bear left, the statement said. Hair collected during the initial investigation into the attack was considered consistent with a brown bear. The bear attack in a remote section of the military base, the department said. A regional supervisor with the department said information gathered so far suggests this was a defensive attack by a female bear protecting her cubs. All right. Yes, folks, never approach any wildlife. Even if it's a squirrel or a raccoon, these animals can have rabies, which could kill you. It could be very deadly. Even a bat, a small bat, do not approach any wildlife. It can't kill you. Just take a picture of it, appreciate its beauty, and do not touch it, though. Interesting. Let's go check back. Okay, no Fred back. Okay, well, let me share something I want to talk about next episode. I wanted to talk about another scientific article. This one is by Jack Valet. I thought we could touch on it. I'll just preview it right now. Jack Valet, Reasons Against Extraterrestrial. Okay, so Dr. Jack Valet wrote this article called Five Arguments Against the Extraterrestrial Origin. Let's go ahead and preview this article. So I thought we could go over this article since it kind of has to do with Dr. Hal Puthoff's ultra-terrestrial paper. But yeah, I'll share a link to this when I get to it. Okay, so here's the paper I want to talk about on Tuesday. So the name of the paper is 5 Arguments Against the Extraterrestrial Origin of Unidentified Flying Objects, written by Dr. Jack Valet. And it looks like this was written in 1990, actually. I feel like he wrote an updated version of this. This might be the original. So this was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration up here. And the PDF is available for free online. And yeah, here's the abstract. This is the abstract. If you remember, when you read a scientific paper, the abstract is a summary of the entire paper. So if you're running short on time, you should be able to read the abstract, which is just like about a paragraph long, a long paragraph, and it'll give you everything you need to know about the paper. Quickly check back on Fred. Okay, let me check my messages again. Nothing yet from Fred. I believe he just probably lost internet, I'm guessing. But anyway, so yeah, the paper, then he gives his initial hypothesis. Once again, a hypothesis is a scientific term. So a hypothesis is a statement that can be tested scientifically. So, a lot of times in movies, people will say, well, my theory is that, these frogs are flying from the sky because of this, or my theory is that Fred doesn't love me. My theory is this. People use the word theory a lot when really they should be using the word hypothesis, because a theory it's a much more robust and it has a different definition than a hypothesis. Almost like 99% of the time, if someone says they have a theory, they really mean a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement that can be tested. So you could say, well, my hypothesis is that frogs fell from the sky because of a storm system. But anyway, right here, he's going to give his initial hypothesis, which is what he believes, why he believes that UFOs are not from an extraterrestrial origin. And then he's got challenges is another section. Argument number 1, close encounter frequency. We've heard this from Hal Puthoff. Hal Puthoff said, these close encounters with UFOs are so common, they happen so often, so dense for hundreds of years, it seems likely that perhaps they're coming from our planet, not from another planet. Then he said, let's see, argument number 2. Oh, he's got a little diagram there. Number 2, he talks about physiology. Physiology is like what your body is made of, your cells, your lungs, so I think he's going to talk about how, right here he says the vast majority of reported aliens, in quotation marks, have a humanoid shape that is characterized by 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head supporting the same organs of perception that we have, like eyes, ears, nose, in the same number and general appearance. So yeah, that's their physiology. So I think he's going to argue that, why are they so similar to us? Well, perhaps because they come from this planet, and that's why we have a similar physiology, because we evolved in the same planet. Argument number 3, abduction reports. That would be interesting. And let's see. Argument number 4, the history. And let's see. Yeah, argument 5, physical considerations. And a new hypothesis. And his conclusion. Very interesting. Now, let me go back, because I feel like he wrote an updated version of this with another person, like a co-author. Oh, let me see. Let's see. Or maybe not. 1990. Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah. Interesting. Well, guys, let's go back. Fred is not back yet, but you guys are still here. Thanks for sticking around. Well, I guess we will cut it short then. That is just a preview of what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday. But I got through all my questions with Fred, so that's good. Once again, thank you everybody for being here. I sure do appreciate the community we have here. Be sure to like this video. Leave a comment. I think it helps more people get it. Just leave a comment. If you want to, just leave. What do you think we should do with Bigfoot? Should we leave Bigfoot alone, or should we study Bigfoot and let science know about Bigfoot? Just put your answer in the comments. I think that helps the video get viewed by more people. But yeah, I guess I'll be back next Tuesday. And I just got an email from Fred. Let's see what he says. Since he's emailing me, he's probably not good. Let's see. Hey, sorry, I have someone on my property that shouldn't be here. Please forgive the interruptions. Out of my control. I apologize, but we'll have to finish up near the future. I'll explain later. So there you go. So Fred, whoever said, Bobby, you said it was a Men in Black. This is very cryptid. It does say he has someone on his property who shouldn't be there. He says, please forgive the interruptions, but I love those dogs interrupting. And he apologizes. And he says he'll explain later. Well, there you have it, folks. Men in Black have come to get Fred. But anyway, thanks again, everybody. Have a great week. And thank you so much for being here. Take care. Goodbye.